if you were uncomfortable in the world at large, that meant that there was something wrong with you. When you're uncomfortable, if you're anxious, if you're afraid, if you're depressed, if you're scared, if you're distracted, if you're awkward, if you're, all those things are considered psychiatric symptoms all of a sudden. And when it's like, dude, that's not a psychiatric symptom, actually. That's called the human condition. Pills are these pills that you have referenced that somehow numb the pain, which they don't do. They're not Band-Aids. They're Band-Aids with razor blades embedded in them. The medicines are serving a purpose to perpetuate the conditions it's marketed to treat. And I think when you can really start getting that maybe there's nothing wrong with you, maybe this is the human condition, that's when the jar starts really opening.
I'm Art Blanchford, and this is Life in Transition. Welcome back to the Life in Transition podcast. I'm very excited today to have with us Dr. Fred, also known as the Undoctor, who is an author, podcaster, speaker, and founder of the Welcome to Humanity, where he believes that all healing starts with deep human connection. And right now he's doing this through the Undoctor Reset program. Dr. Fred, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the Life in Transition podcast.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation, Art. Thanks for having me as a guest. Let's get this thing going.
Let's jump in. So as I start with all my podcasts, Dr. Fred, what has been one of the most meaningful or profound transitions that you have been through in your life?
Yeah, so I'd say that there's many, and the one that comes to mind, if I'm really looking at in my life, would probably be the birth of my first child. I mean, that's when things really shifted. That's when my whole purpose in life shifted that day, and I thought I knew what I was doing and why I was doing it. But once my son was born 34 years ago, there was a new opportunity to step into what is my real purpose. What where am I willing to step in front of a train, or take a hand grenade, or what am I willing to die for? What am I willing to live for? And I'd say that was probably maybe the biggest transition. There are many other transitions that I've made, and my most recent marriage is a big one. This idea of shifting my focus inside of my business from being a conventional doctor doing what they're asking me to doing something now where I really take on what I know true healing to be, rather than what I'm told that diagnoses and medications have to offer, has been one of the focuses foci, I should say, that has been a major transition. And, all the moving that I've done from city to city, or partner to partner, or job to job, or all many, and there's hundreds of those in my life.
So I think I want to pull the red thread, but starting with the one when your son was born, because you said it really taught you about what is purpose and what are you willing to, walk in front of a train for, right? So it really shifted your understanding of what's important in your life.
Yeah.
So how did that shift? If you go back to that point, and just for some reference, how many years ago was that?
34 years ago.
34 years ago. What did you learn from that transition, from that, having that first son, where everything shifted, all your perspectives changed, your paradigms changed? What was it that is crystallized from that point that really shifted at that point for you?
Yeah. So, it was like, I thought I was out there doing good work and being a contribution and helping people and having some kind of purpose. As a recently graduated, I think I was in the last year of my residency and first year of my fellowship at the same time that my son was born. And all of those things business-wise gave me something that I would now say relatively was a superficial purpose. But when Bennett was born, the whole idea was, wow, there's a child here. This is what we have. We have a responsibility. I have a responsibility to be at my best self as best as I can anyways, day after day. I have somebody watching me, learning from me, being with me, counting on me. Someone that I'm generally responsible for in their upbringing, making sure that they're fed, taken care of, loved, listened to, some new focus. And the idea of being a father, I had, as most of us had, had a preconceived notion that this might be the most important thing to do in life at all, was really to be a father. And I think I took that on. Like, this is our boy. This is my boy. This is, someone I get to take into my life here and introduce, to this wild and wacky, chaotic, obstacle-filled, hurdle-filled, challenge-filled life. And, ride on my shoulders, let's go. And he actually did ride on my shoulders, and he rode on my chest for those first several years where, I took him wherever I went. And we had, everything from, meetings to the park, to walks, to, rides. And, he was very close to me and still is very close to me. And it is still, which is really quite amazing. We've been close since that very day. I feel very honored to have him be in my life. He's a remarkable human being, as is his sister, probably the only person who's even slightly more remarkable than him. And, the sort of like the definition of love and the definition of a true human connection, and maybe the definition of healing, like you're already introduced to.
Well, first of all, congratulations for recognizing at the time of being a father that it's the most important job that you have.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't recognize that at the time. And, I have friends that are becoming fathers. I say, welcome to the most difficult and best job on the planet.
It is. It is indeed both those things. Yeah.
And most important job on the planet. So congratulations for recognizing that. How did those shifts at that time, I mean, especially in the medical industry, and it's true with a lot of things, if you go up a corporate executive track as well, the work can be all consuming, can be, become your complete identity. And as a young man at that time, especially in residency, which is wanting to take everything you have at that point, how did you manage to make it important where you really have your son with you all the time and still be successful in such a demanding profession? And what did you need to learn or apply in order to do that?
It's a tough question. I can not really look back. You just do what's on the front edge of what there is to do. Life is interesting and requires massive responsibility second by second. And I get to choose what I'm going to put on the front burner and what I'm going to take on. And so once he was born, and once I really realized that there was a soul to pay attention to, it wasn't a matter of juggling whether or not I could continue being a resident, or what was going on between me and my now ex-wife at the time, and how to take care of myself, and how to make it to places on time, and how to plan things, and how to find friends for myself, or how to interact with colleagues, or interact with patients, or interact with friends or family. Life comes at you, life keeps lifing, and you get to choose those priorities. And, having Bennett in my life, and then his sister as well, has always just naturally been, some version of, if I have to set everything aside and keep only one thing to do, being a dad is going to be on that short list of being the thing to do.
So as life comes at you fast and furious, as it does with young kids and professions, especially being a medical doctor, you just constantly had in front of you that the top priority was your children.
It wasn't even it doesn't feel like it was a decision. It feels like it was like, that's just the way it is. The reason I'm living, the reason I have purpose, each and every step that I take, each and every comment I make, each and every breath I take, to quote Sting, you just have this idea that it's almost like, WWB, what would Bennett think? There was something like that. There's a ramification for everything that I do.
Okay. No, that's a great filter to run it through. And that's really clear. So now you have, two beautiful, adult, healthy children, and now you're focused on healing for other people. What were the lessons that you've learned from that shift, from that focus of becoming a parent, and that focus that you carried on making sure you're doing the best for this other human being, this other spiritual soul, as you mentioned a minute ago? How has that translated in what you're choosing to do now, all these years later?
Yeah, it's not, again, it's not like there was a break in this. I've always been deeply interested in making a big difference in the world and creating healing, or bringing joy and love and some degree of purpose into whatever setting I've entered. And that started from the first moment I was born. So, the biggest transition was the transition to be born, I guess. And,
Yeah.
man, if you really look at that, this idea of I was brought into a family that was in a fair amount of chaos and disarray with two brothers, 10 and 14 years old, waiting for me to come out and to actually bring peace and joy to that kind of family that had massive conflict going on. So I was the bundle of joy and, the gift and the hope for my then 4-person family. I was the fifth one. And, and that's what I proceeded to do for those first several years. So I don't think my brothers would still say that I did a great job for 67 years, but I did a good job early on. And, in bringing peace and hope and unity and joy and love into that family. So with the birth of Bennett, I think what I got was, oh, look how the data in life can be perceived in so many different ways. Things happen, and how I see myself and see my interface with the world of circumstances, or what's going on with my responsibilities or the things going on in my head, really counts on me being able to step into creating a context that's worthwhile, a context that's worthy of my next actions. And I think what I learned more than anything on the heels of that was that I have a responsibility to be a massive contribution to humanity. It's actually all I have. And so, and I had been given this power role by that point in the community. I guess those two initials on the back end of my name give me a certain set of power, whether or not I deserve them. People want to care a lot about what I say or what I do or how I work, and I'm being watched and I'm being monitored, and people are, following and people are listening. And it's important that I mean what I say and say what I mean, is at least, and I grow into that. That's not a simple process either in this human.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
So you were born with this sense of bringing joy and peace and connection into your family. And then when you had your son and then later your daughter, you reemphasized that this is still your purpose to bring this to the world. But the most important people to start with is your kids, if I'm putting words in your mouth.
A little bit. I think that there was some kaboom when Bennett was born that, okay, now I've entered that I'm never not going to be a father, this is how this goes. And this was a tumbling into this new identity that is actually carries weight in reality, like how I behave, what I say, what I do, how I interact, how I present myself to the world around is going to have an impact, subtle or obvious, on my children. And my interest is giving my offspring an opportunity to walk through the world and make a difference themselves, and be honest and authentic with whoever they are. And both of them have, I don't think that I was the only or even necessarily the primary teacher of this, but both of them have such spectacular lives and they're such beautiful humans that I'm not saying that because I'm their dad. I really don't believe that. I think that it's very clear that they have their heart and their soul and their commitment to humanity in such a high level. They're beautiful, beautiful thinkers, beautiful contributors, and beautiful humans. And it's been quite a ride for those 34 and a half years that I've been with Bennett, and then later on with his sister.
No, I think that's great, and that's the ultimate goal, right? That we have people that enjoy their life, contribute to humanity, bring their creativity, right? That's the ultimate goal.
That's what they're doing for sure,
and that's beautiful. So, we obviously did a lot of things right in that. How has that translated into what you're doing now? The choice to transform from the traditional medical doctor role into somebody that's really, helping people reset and really helping them heal through this deep, profound human connection.
Yeah, I think I never really felt very comfortably or in a fulfilling or satisfying way into the traditional medical doctor role. I think the people who went to medical school with me or the people who were in my residency or in my early practice already knew that I wasn't really aligned with much of what was being asked for me to carry on. I take the whole idea of creating a space for people to grow and people to learn and people to become a better sense of their self, a better person, a better version of their self. That I take that role seriously and have had the opportunity on hundreds, if not thousands of occasions to actually make a difference in those people's lives. I've had like 30,000 people is what the estimate is, people who have at least for 1 minute called me their doctor. And in a long career like this, where there's been over 45 years in the field, there is a commitment, a declaration and a dedication and a commitment to bringing the very best life I can to whatever's out there, but being very honest and authentic. So as the Undoctor, what I have learned is that the conventional medical or the conventional psychiatric system might not be the best way to approach life when you're uncomfortable. Being uncomfortable is part of being human and not necessarily pathological at all. And being highly uncomfortable, even when you know that there's something wrong with you, doesn't even mean that there's something wrong with you. So when you really get that, even if you know in the inside, you're like, man, this is a mess. I am different. I am wrong. Something must be wrong with me for me to be feeling so discombobulated or lousy. Maybe that's not the case at all. There's some reassurance and some security that can be offered inside of strategies and tools and practices and exercises that can, mitigate some of the discomfort. And there's nothing inherently wrong or pathological about being like terribly uncomfortable, for instance. Oh, you're on mute. All right.
Thank you. Yeah, it's interesting. There's a big difference between being uncomfortable, like pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, and being spinning or being dysregulated, right? Just, and it is that, a lot of about our culture in the last 150 years has been about making things more comfortable, but making things more comfortable does not make us more happy, does not help us grow, right? It's by pushing ourselves outside of our comfort zone that we actually feel purpose, or it's the yin and the yang of purpose and doing something that's worthwhile and bringing us fully alive.
Yeah. Comfort is very seductive as something to approach or call what normal is. On my watch for instance, in 1987, a few years before Bennett was born, there was the advent and the introduction of Prozac into the world, and people really have forgotten. People are either too young or don't really remember the massive impact that Prozac brought in. It was like massive. It was just as massive as this thing that happened in 2020 for sure. It was massive, dude. It was a thing. And there was this idea that all of a sudden we had a pill that could take away discomfort. That was the notion, and that not only that, the translation or the associated correlative is this idea that if you were uncomfortable in the world at large, that meant that there was something wrong with you. Now, that was the first time that it ever came into being as a reality. And now it's become a sort of a stamp. When you're uncomfortable, if you're anxious, if you're afraid, if you're depressed, if you're scared, if you're distracted, if you're awkward, if you're feeling uneasy or distressed, all those things are considered psychiatric symptoms all of a sudden. And when it's like, dude, that's not a psychiatric symptom, actually, that's called the human condition. And when that just comes with the package, and just being honest about that rather than going down the rabbit hole in agreement with the way that the industry standard had been set from 1987 forward. It isn't like that was a cold, hard moment, but yes, it was. Actually.
Yeah, that we're a little bit uncomfortable. We need a pill. What would you say is the difference between being, dysregulated or completely stressed out and non-functional versus just being outside your comfort zone?
Well, I think that you get a choice whether or not you're incapable. All of a sudden being so stressed out that you're non-functional is actually a choice. So you don't really, there's no, being dysfunctional or emotional dysregulation is a real deal, of course. And when you choose to let go of that steering wheel, because that is essentially a choice, that there is an opportunity to become regulated. One notices that things are careening out of control. There's an opportunity through tools, through practices, through these gifts that are out here that have been compiled over time inside of the billions of people that have already sampled what it means to be a human for somewhere between 1 and 100 years. There's some things that have been discovered that can help us get back to regulation, should that be the direction we want to go. It's not like being regulated is better than not being regulated, by the way. They're both options. You can be regulated and you can be non-regulated, and both of them have consequences. But when we feel regulated, when we have an opportunity to take our emotions and, contain ourselves or sustain ourselves, or choose when and how to use our inherent discomfort or the things that we're having that are challenging, we can often get a life that actually works and is progressively moving forward. If we're emotionally dysregulated, more often than not, what we're really doing is simply reacting to the world around us as if we are at the mercy of the world around us, at the effect of the world around us. And that doesn't necessarily lead to the sequential aspiration to move the needle forward. In order to move the needle forward, there has to, for the most part, be some direction and some sequence and some control or containment of what would otherwise be, kind of willy-nilly taking on whatever my feelings are about what's ever going on internally or externally.
Yeah, no, we can't clearly, if we operate completely at the mercy of our feelings, we're not living a very fulfilling life. But I think in my experience, and I have a lot of experience with this because I have a son that has reactive attachment, or I'm very happy to say had reactive attachment disorder from being adopted from Siberia and not getting the things he needed, like you gave to your son when he was young. But being regulated is really important. And I want to get into the tools of that if you want to move your life forward. But there's a big difference between being uncomfortable and being dysregulated. Mm-hmm. Right? All of us can be pushed to a point where we can become dysregulated. But if we're healthy, as the work that you're doing, and then it's much, much, much harder to get us to that point where we're completely dysregulated. Mm-hmm. And there are strategies, as you said, and there's a lot of people that develop to get us regulated. But the thought that just because we're regulated means that we should be comfortable, that's completely different. And all growth comes outside our comfort zone.
Yeah,
right?
I love what you're saying with all growth becoming outside of our comfort zone. It's some version, I guess, of like no pain, no gain, or some version like, without comfort, or with comfort, there's no growth, that we pursue comfort. We just pursue the absence of pain and dismay or despair. We do whatever we can to avoid pain, sometimes to the point of sheer absurdity. And the opportunity is to, in some ways, stretch ourselves into discomfort, but not stretch ourselves into such a space where we no longer feel we can hang on to that wheel of life and, just explode out whatever comes next. And we all have experiences of losing our capacity to emotionally regulate. But when I suppose, like you're suggesting, if we're interested in moving the needle forward, if they're interested in creating a project, if we're interested in being a contribution in a real way and carrying out plans or carrying out intentions, then emotional regulation is going to be a nice additive tool to get that done.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Midlife Transition Mastery. If you have reached midlife and you are successful, you have checked all the boxes, you've done everything you thought you should do, and especially pleasing everybody else, doing what you think everyone else needs you to do, but you still feel like something's missing. You're coming up empty, feeling alone, feeling misguided or lost. Midlife Transition Mastery Explorer community is for you. Here we will build authentic community. We will learn about the 8 steps to mastering midlife transition. And we will learn and execute living life with no regrets in our second half. Please check out the community on lifeintransition.online/MLTN. Midlife Transition Mastery. And I look forward to seeing you around the fire in this community. Yeah, you have to have that. I mean, you have to have that. If you're dysregulated, the only thing that matters at that point is to become regulated so that you can carry life forward. But I come back to like this difference between regulation and comfort. That comfort, yes, we need comfort to retreat into. We need rest, right? We need to recharge, but it's not a desired state for the whole time. Right? If you want to be comfortable all the time, I guarantee you're not healthy. Like if you train your body just on a physical level, if you train your body, you're going to be in discomfort in order to have your body trained physically well. If you're going to be healthy emotionally, you're going to be in discomfort, right? You can guarantee comfort, but then your life gets very, very small. And if we don't want to risk any pain, we also don't get to experience the joy or love that comes on the other side of it.
Very true. Very true. So there's an illusion of an illusion that comfort is the steady state, and that's not it at all. Comfort is nothing wrong with comfort. I love comfort as much as the next person. I love, comfy couch. I love lying down. I love being out in nature. I love good food. I love seeing things that make me comfortable, or being with people who make me comfortable. I like comfort as much as anyone, and there's nothing wrong with comfort. But in the world of growth and development, I think you're going to find that most of the people who have gained some degree of wisdom have done so through a series of very uncomfortable experiences that they've had in their life.
Yes. Yeah. And we all know, I mean, I think about even in marriages, right? Like I've been married 32 years, right? You've been in marriages, some that have ended, right? So there's beauty and love and connection that comes with that. And then it hurts when they end, and mine's going to end too at some point. Because one of us is going to die or we'll get divorced. I hope we don't get divorced. I think we're on a great track right now, 32 years in. But if you said, well, I don't ever want to experience the pain, like let's just say, for example, if my wife dies before I do,
God forbid,
and I say I don't want to experience that pain, then I would never get married, and then I would not have a life.
Yeah,
from my perspective today. So worshiping at the altar of comfort is completely missing out on the experience of life.
Yeah, it's true. So choosing not to pursue something because discomfort might be an outcome of it is really missing out on a massive amount of life, because discomfort is likely to be a potential option of anything that's worthwhile. And, being disillusioned or being disappointed with outcomes is something we're also, really programmed to experience. And that disappointment can take us out as well and be highly uncomfortable. And look, we really are programmed to avoid discomfort at all costs. So you have to work against that grain. The truth is, left to my own accord, I'm going to stay away from the flame. I'm not interested in discomfort. I'm just really not. And it doesn't make me less of a person. That just makes me a person. So in order to do that, I need to be able to, as they say, become comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's what's really here. That's how growth and development, that's how the light gets in.
So how do you practice that? How do you, when you talk about, your project with the Undoctor reset, like how do you help people to become comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah. So we start looking at, the best way to do that, I think, is just to connecting with another person. If we're able to see that just because someone's uncomfortable or just because I'm uncomfortable, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with me. That's just a great way to start. Like maybe the diagnosis that you thought you had, maybe the condition that you thought you were like permanently saddled with isn't even real at all. Like maybe you're just going through a temporary or a tentative experience. And in that possibility, we start getting that if there's nothing wrong with you, well, then you don't need to be fixed. And if you don't need to be fixed, well, then maybe you don't need mental health treatment. If you don't need mental health treatment, then for sure you don't need any medication. And if all those things come on, there's something very valuable about that, because the treatment itself creates the perpetuation of the condition it's marketed to treat. And the medicines themselves actually often create physiological responses that are, in fact, chemical imbalances that now leave us off center. That's why we take the medicines anyways, of course, is to create a chemical imbalance. And then we wonder how we're chemically imbalanced. And the reason we're chemically imbalanced is often because we'd agreed to take on a diagnosis and then agreed to take on the medications that otherwise maybe have been designed to at least interface with that diagnosis. They're not designed, nor are they advertised to cause a relief to cause a healing of the diagnosis. When we get a mental health diagnosis, most people know that or really think that, okay, now I have this condition, I got to deal with it the rest of my life, or I got to slow it down or contain it. And that people see it that way, but that isn't how life goes. Life goes through dips and turns. And so when we can give up on the idea that we have an affliction or a deficiency or a disorder or an illness or some form of a syndrome or some form of a mental condition, when we can give up on some label of some sort, when we can give up on that and start realizing, no, this is actually just the next version of what it means to be human, then that's how the Undoctor reset really starts. So the first thing that we're talking about is maybe, just maybe, there's never been anything wrong with you, even if you think you've had a psychiatric diagnosis for years or decades.
And how is that received? Like when you're working with your clients now?
Yeah. Most people, look, there's some people who love their diagnosis and, they think their diagnosis, it actually relinquishes the responsibility they might have for their life. That wasn't me. That was my ADD. That wasn't me. That was my bipolar disorder. That wasn't me. That was my PTSD. That wasn't me. I'm a narcissist. That wasn't me. I'm on the spectrum. That wasn't me. I have social phobia. I have schizoaffective disorder. I have schizophrenia. I've got whatever I've got. And so that wasn't me. There's a me here that is like being run by my so-called condition. So there's people who love, and that's not true for everyone with their condition. There's some people, if you ask them, they'd say that getting their psychiatric diagnosis and then carrying on with their treatment and their therapies and their medicines or whatever they're getting is the best thing that ever happened for them, and that they now have like a purpose in life, or they now have found some degree of so-called comfort. And if you're one of those people, if your listeners are one of those people, my real answer to that is like really more power to you. And please keep doing exactly what you're doing. If you have found that level of peace where you can't even consider trading it in for anything in any area of life, right? Like that is a spectacular outcome of anything that you're pursuing. Like, no, I'm good. No cards for me. I'm good. I'm going to hold my hand just like it is. Then good for you. Please keep doing that.
Continue.
Doing that. But for the hundreds of millions of people in the mental health field who don't feel that way, who really feel like they've been misdiagnosed, overdiagnosed, mistreated, overtreated, undertreated, misheard, misperceived, misunderstood, this is what the Undoctor Reset is for. It's for people who already know that the system that they were hoping would help them or hoping would give them some peace or some comfort or some freedom hasn't worked in that way. And they're looking for finding a way to get that access. And, when you ask me how it's taken, the idea of having a relief from an ongoing lifelong condition is usually taken pretty well.
For sure.
And so that's what we're really working on is that. And, people are like, no, I'm sick. I'm going to stay sick. I want to be sick. And that's the way I am. Part of me is being ill. It's like.
So Dr. Fred, let me share an experience with you and see where this takes you, because I'm a strong believer in, discomfort. I'm one of these crazy guys that does a lot of athletic things. I do cold showers and cold plunges. And
I did one today already, by the way. So
me too. On the shower yesterday, I was out in New Mexico at this wonderful Connection spiritual conference with Richard Rohr and a bunch of other men. And, last thing I did before I left, I'm going to jump in the cold creek one more time and I'll shower off and head to the airport.
Yeah. Beautiful.
So
was it in Santa Fe or Albuquerque? Where were you?
It was in Jimenez, a small place outside of Albuquerque, hour and a half from Albuquerque.
Okay, cool.
In a retreat center, really, really wonderful. With
beautiful
organization called Illumin, which is really great. So this summer, I've gone through for what I would describe myself for the first time in my life, really depression, like for several months of feeling really down, crying a lot, like what's going on?
Yeah.
But in that, like, if I had just taken a pill to numb it,
no, that wouldn't have what
it maybe would have stopped, maybe wouldn't have. I don't have any idea. But through the searching of the discomfort, when I got to a place where the only thing that felt like life bringing to me was I had been thinking about for 5 years to hike the Appalachian Trail. And the only thing, in June this year, the only thing that was felt life bringing to me was like, let's get started on the Appalachian Trail. Doesn't make any sense. And it's definitely not comfortable, right? But this is the thing, because, everything else. I'm doing all this good stuff, and I have a wonderful family and 3 kids that love me and a great relationship with my wife and money and all this stuff. And yet I feel this way. But in that darkness, the only thing that was calling me was get started on your hike of the Appalachian Trail. So because, if everything else had been fluid and I wasn't having those really uncomfortable feelings, I probably wouldn't have done that yet. But that was the one thing. So I did, so September 1st, I was up in the top of Maine, very deliberately doing the hardest part of the trail first by myself, headed south into the 100-mile wilderness. And within 2 days, I felt completely different.
Oh, for sure.
I was on the trail, like I had travel and stuff, but I was on the trail for 11 days total and had a completely different feeling, very uncomfortable, but also very wonderful. Very simple, tons of connection with myself, tons of connection with God, tons of connection with nature, a fair amount of connection even with other people. In the evenings, I was often camping with other people. Sometimes I chose to just camp by myself. But I don't know how long it would take me to get to that point if it wasn't for that discomfort. Now, I also reached out to people, right? Like you talk about the human connection. I think it's super important that if you are feeling that way, to have people that you can reach out to and share that with, so that if you're near that point, you at least keep breathing. Mm-hmm. But I think that there can be a gift in the discomfort to push us toward what it is that really we're meant to do, or will bring joy, will bring the connection. Mm-hmm. But it's not, life is not a comfortable process for sure. There is, as the Buddha said, right? Life is suffering.
Yeah.
Right. And then how do we bring joy? How do we not make our mental chatter or our pain out of the suffering by ruminating on it instead of taking action or doing something that we can do about it?
Yeah.
But for someone in that situation, what would you say for your Undoctor reset program? What would be your recommendation in that situation?
Well, that situation, what you did was highly recommended. That's very much in line with what the Moss method is, which is the driving program behind the Undoctor reset. It is a group of 20 things that I've compiled, and they're not all inclusive in any stretch or in any way or stretch or form, but. Some of those things include movement. They include nature. They include creativity. They include getting outside. They include, like getting fresh air, meditation and gratitude and spirituality and being of service and pampering ourselves. Cold showers is actually on the list as one of the things. When we really look at the value of the things that we can do, so we can be at the effect of this sense of depression. As I just, I was on a podcast already earlier this morning, so I'm having a hard time remembering what I said to him and what I'm saying to you. But here we go. If we start looking at, the things that we can do, that bring comfort, we can step into our greater self. And there's nothing wrong with being uncomfortable. There's nothing being a human and embracing the discomfort of life is part of life. So
absolutely.
And we can be if we had to decide let's say me and you went out right now and we were like, okay, let's get to do a project. Let's come up with 100 reasons to be depressed. It would take us like 4 minutes.
Yeah. You could do it very quickly. Yeah.
100. How about 100 reasons to be anxious?
Yeah, sure.
How about 100 reasons to be terrified?
Yeah, maybe a little bit longer, but yeah, you could get there.
Maybe not longer. For some people, maybe shorter. And how about 100 reasons to be distracted? 100 reasons to be aimless? 100 reasons to be hopeless? 100 reasons for any of these things.
Right, but you could flip them around just as quickly the other direction.
They're really here. You get to pick and choose how you want to see the context of your life. You get to decide which things are going to be on your plate.
Yeah, because I could find reasons for all those, but I can just as quickly find, maybe not just as quickly, because depending on what mindset I'm in, but I can also quite simply find 100 reasons to be grateful, 100 reasons to be joyful,
exactly.
100 reasons to be excited, 100 reasons to be happy, 100 reasons to feel connected.
Exactly. And so it isn't the outside world that's actually creating that.
That's right.
The data's there all the time.
Right.
There's not going to be a time later today where finding out 100 reasons becomes even harder. That's not really true.
Right. So that's true. The problem is not outside. It's not out there, right? Exactly. It's in us. But how do we make that shift, Dr. Fred? Like, so, because if I'm been ruminating on the 100 reasons to be depressed,
Yeah.
and I'm ruminating on those all the time. Now, maybe it's already, I have 1,700 reasons to be depressed because I've been ruminating on it for a long time. And I've drilled those brains, those neurons are firing for 6 months. How do I make the shift?
So it's a theory, this idea that those neurons have been firing for 6 months and there's now 1,700 reasons. So look, they're always still there. So the shift is getting that maybe there's nothing wrong with you. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate shift. The ultimate shift is that being highly uncomfortable does not equate to there being something wrong with you. And that you have something to say about how uncomfortable or comfortable you are in life. Now, once you get that, once you get the possibility that being uncomfortable is not the same as being pathologically ill, it's nothing inherently wrong with it, it's one of the choices of life, then things tend to just loosen. The jar tends to loosen, and you get to see. Then, if you get down to creativity, if you do some meditation, if you do some gratitude, if you do a cold shower, if you watch your nutrition, if you get yourself hydrated, if you get out with the people that you love. Yeah, exactly. Get some sleep. If you actually pay attention to keeping yourself out of bad environments, watching what goes into not only your mouth, but what goes into your ears, what goes into your sight, what goes into your connection. When you start doing that and you start really feeling like, wow, depression isn't something that got me. It's not like a disease of a bug that came out here and infected me with depression. Depression is a mindset that I have developed at some point when I'm feeling depressed. Even if I say that I've been depressed for several months in the throes of depression, one can see that the actual, the actual agency, the actual sovereignty, the actual choreography of my life actually sits with me. And I have an opportunity to take the same data and step in many different ways. I can have myself be and feel entirely depressed if I want to, or scared, or anxious, or nervous, or hopeless, or helpless. And I don't have to. And it's not, in some ways, I am always at the helm. I'm the captain of how my life is going. And even when I'm pretty sure that I'm not the captain, like I am so overwhelmed that I can't move and I just now find myself simply surviving or simply reacting. But that's just a phase as well.
So you're saying that the starting point, because I have been there, I have felt that way. The times where I'm just like, right?
Yeah.
And it feels like I don't have any agency at that time. Right.
It's
and you're saying that the starting point, though, is to recognize that feeling is also fairly normal, that everybody goes through that's a part of the human condition. And just that can give me a possibility to, let's say, relax a little bit, which can then make me feel like I have a little bit of agency. Because, hey, if this is just part of the condition, then I know, one, it's temporary. It's not going to stay forever. And then it starts to change my mindset a little bit.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. Go ahead.
And then the other things you're saying that we can do is to do the things that we all know. I say at least people listening to this podcast know by now that there's things we can do: exercise, rest, meditation, right? Good connection, as you said, that we can do to also help us along that path.
Yeah.
To change our physiology, which will change our psychology as well.
Yeah. We have a choice. We could say we do know which things work and which things don't work, at least as launching pad items. So we know that if we step outside, or we decide we're going to do the Appalachian Trail, we're going to decide that, okay, I'm going to just take 20 minutes to sit and meditate, or I'm going to, call my sister, or I'm going to go to church, or I'm going to study, or I'm going to go help somebody. That's a very nice trump card in the whole thing, is this idea of helping other people works all the time like a charm. And so when I help somebody, even as lousy as I feel, if I can get, okay, they told me, I remember I heard that if I help somebody, that will help me. Let me just go do that and try it out, even though it seems absurd. Why would I want to help someone I can't even get myself out of bed? And the answer is because that's what's going to get you out of bed. And so once you start getting the pleasure and the revitalization and the reset, if you will, of getting yourself back on track and rediscovering the beauty and the miracle of what it means to be a human being in all of its colors, including all the things that are so sour and so unacceptable and so seemingly intolerable, as well as the miraculous and the ecstatic things that are in the same world, in the same right in the same block. Then we start seeing, wow, it's a multidimensional, complicated life I have. And it leads to particular moods here and there that are transient and temporary. And welcome to humanity, which is the ultimately the name of my brand. And so it's, it's not, I love the name. And the reason I love the name is there's very few actions in life where that's not an appropriate response.
This episode of the Life in Transition podcast is brought to you by Transition Mastery Coaching. If you have made it to midlife and you're successful and you are going through transitions in your life, in your business, in your career, or in your organization, and you are looking to master those transitions, to make the most of them, to accelerate into the next phase of your organization or your life, if you're facing, challenges in your business, challenges in your relationship, challenges in your health, and you really want to transition those quickly, I'm here to guide you for that. And I look forward to working with you. You can sign up for either Pinnacle Transition Coaching or Summit. Please go to lifeintransition.online/MLTM and scroll to see the Summit and Pinnacle Coaching, or reach out to me directly on my email, art@artblanchford.com. And I look forward to connecting with you and helping you to accelerate your transitions to achieve what it is that you want to achieve in the second half in your organization and in your life, so you can live your whole life with no regrets. Right. Just like welcome to life, welcome to humanity. That's part of it.
That's
part of the game.
Yeah.
Right. Love, loss, life, death, joy, sadness. It's all part of the game.
Part of the game.
And that's what makes a symphony, the high notes and the low notes, right? 100%. You can't have one without the other.
100%.
Right.
Yep.
So, but the starting point of that is to, as you said earlier, is to accept that is a part of the condition. It doesn't mean that there's something uniquely wrong with you that's incurable and you're going to be stuck like this forever. To get over that line of thinking, which can help the pain, lessen and the focus change to agency instead of what you can't do, instead of
it's interesting. As you say this, and I just addressed this yesterday in this retreat I was on as well. It's a real experience that at the time is that there's something uniquely wrong with me, that what I'm experiencing right now is so lonely and so real. And in fact, I doubt that anybody out there has ever experienced this, because I wouldn't wish this on anybody. And
right.
This is all because of her or it or that or him or them or something. And, or I just, feel hopeless or helpless, or I don't have the motivation. I don't have the interest. Or that, this is permanent or it's going to stay, or all of those things, like that in and of itself, that experience in and of itself is also part of humanity.
Right. Right. Yes.
So not only the experience that is causing that experience, but the experience of having that experience is part of humanity.
And the thought process around it and what we're telling ourselves and so forth. Yeah,
yes,
that makes sense. Question. If you look back, and I know we've sort of really talked about two big transitions. One was when you were becoming a father, and the other is when you were leaving the medical profession to reset. I shouldn't say even leaving, but redoing the medical profession in a way to do the Undoctor reset. But if you look back, like if you hadn't become a father, how would your life be different? If you hadn't gone through that transition, how would your life be different today? Would you still have been to the point where you are now, or can you imagine not having that, or would you have eventually become a father at some point anyway?
No, my life would be drastically different. That's for sure. Hedonism or, some sort of fulfilling or working to go fulfill my needs somewhere else somehow, whether that would have been drugs and alcohol or the pursuit of pleasure at all costs or whatever I would have done. And I really doubt that I would be alive. I really doubt that I would be alive 34 years later. I really do. I probably would have gone out in a flame of some sort. So it wouldn't, it's not like I would have just faded away and died. But this idea of essentially what Bennett offered and his sister is this something and someone to be accountable for. So I do
bigger
this
than yourself, outside yourself.
Outside myself, yeah. So I do this a certain way. I do this now. I haven't always been good at it. I've still, committed some acts that I'm not very proud of, that I feel ashamed.
As we all have.
And we all have. And, I talked to my son yesterday and it's just purposeful. We have a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun in our conversations talking about whatever, in this case, we were talking about the Detroit Tigers, and it was like, okay, let's see what's really there. And, but we talk about things that are far and deep. We actually did Zion Park last month. The two of us were there, and not so far from New Mexico. We were down
Utah,
in southern Utah, and it was a beautiful time. And what would my life have been like without these transitions? It would have just gone.
Well, I mean, I think it's pretty. It can't be more dramatic than, hey, I still wouldn't be here.
I definitely wouldn't be here.
I would have found some hedonistic or addiction type of way to try to fulfill myself, which would have left to an early demise.
At the very least.
yeah, at the very least. And I think there's a couple of lessons inside there, which is finding something outside yourself that's bigger than yourself to give yourself to, which in this case was your children, and now you're doing it in your business as well. Yeah, now that's pretty profound. Are there things that you would tell your younger self?
It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay, and God's got a plan, and it's going to be a hard ride, and
that's part of it. It's okay.
That's part of it, and that there's such thing as purpose. There's such thing. There's such thing as designing something that's aligned with your core values and then pursuing it. There's like it can happen once you clear out all the muck.
Nice. So the healing to clear out the muck, and then recognizing there is a possibility to really live in alignment with your values and purpose that's meaningful and helpful and uncomfortable, but valuable and energizing and life-bringing to you, and maybe most importantly to others. Exactly.
Very well said. Exactly.
Nice. Yeah. Two last questions, Dr. Fred.
Yeah.
If someone is really stuck in one of their labels right now, and Lord, there's lots of labels. I'm sure you know this data better than me, but I think something like 30% of the population is on some sort of psychiatric medicine right now.
It depends what you call a psychiatric medicine, but that's probably an underestimate.
Okay, so then my data is a little bit
the data is what the data is, but it depends what you call a psychiatric medicine.
Right, I understand, but that's a huge. 100 million people.
Yeah, at least 100 million, right, for sure.
So if somebody has one of these labels and they have one of these pills that's trying to help them with these labels, what's the one tool that you would give them, one thing that they can do, actionable thing, if they put pause right now on this podcast and they push pause and go do it to help take a step toward getting away from these labels, what would that tool be? What would that action be?
Yeah, so I think that, these pills that you have referenced that somehow numb the pain, which they don't do. I mean, that isn't really what they do at all. That's like one of the best case scenarios is that they're numbing pain. But I like to call them, they're not Band-Aids. They're Band-Aids with razor blades embedded in them. And that's, that you really start looking at that's what it is. It's not a number. If it was a number, I'd be okay with them.
Even that keeps you from, that's even worse than a number, but numbing still keeps you from living life. And whether you numb with an over-the-counter prescription like alcohol or something else.
There's nothing that much different between over-the-counter and not over-the-counter. Right. Ultimately, it's kind of arbitrary. And, and the medicines are serving a purpose to perpetuate the conditions it's marketed to treat. When we really get that that's what the medicines are doing, is serving a purpose to perpetuate the conditions they're marketed to treat. When you really start getting that, then there is a very real thing that can be done, which is looking in the mirror and having a conversation with yourself that maybe, just maybe, even this ogre that you see in the mirror, or this twisted, conflicted person that you see in the mirror, maybe there's nothing wrong with you. And I think when you can really start getting that maybe there's nothing wrong with you, maybe this is the human condition, that's when the jar starts really opening. You know, in 2000.
So when you say look in the mirror, so again, if I'm going to hit pause on this podcast, and I'm going to go out and find a mirror and look in the mirror.
Yeah.
What's the conversation? What's the statement? Like, what is the tipping point where I can start to feel that if I'm having that conversation with myself in the mirror? What would you prescribe?
I think the conversation is some version of I love you, and some version of I care for you, some version of I am you, some version of there's nothing wrong with me, some version of maybe Dr. Fred is right that there's nothing wrong with me, or that's what's giving me the chemical imbalance I thought that I had is actually the medicines I'm taking to counteract it. Like those medicines actually cause this chemical imbalance that it was marketed to deal with.
I'm going to drill in on the first thing you said, because that's one I believe. Right? That you said the first thing when you go to the mirror is look at yourself and say, I love you.
Yeah.
Right? I've read Kamal Ravikant's book, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It, because it does.
Yeah.
Shifted a lot for me. But that's a very powerful statement. And then the CEO of Homeboy, who I was talking with this weekend, he said, all healing starts when I understand that God loves me completely.
That's right. Yeah.
Right? And so self-love, God's love, that's to get to the point that we know that we are lovable, and we can start loving ourselves, knowing that God loves us. Then that can be the stepping off point to realizing that maybe we don't need this. One other thing I want to plug in here, and this is just to back up your point, Dr. Fred, is I met this very interesting person on the trail. I'm not going to say too much about it now because I think they might be a guest on the podcast later, but they started in the trail in a very tough place, physical health and emotional health. When I met them, they were about to finish the trail. They were going northbound. And they had lost 65 pounds, were feeling great, but here's the most interesting thing, had self-weaned off of 12 medications while being on the Appalachian Trail for 6 months.
Very cool. That's how they got there. That's great.
So that, again, being uncomfortable, but doing something, right? Getting out, nature, moving, right? But it's just amazing to see, someone that had a lot of reason an older person, so a lot of reason to believe their life was sort of over, but by doing something that was speaking to them, that wasn't in their comfort zone, their life is completely transformed.
Yeah. Beautiful.
All right.
Love it.
Last question for you, Dr. Fred. Where can people find out more about you? Where can they connect with you? If they want to hear about the Undoctor reset, they want to hear about the Moss method, where can they connect with you?
Yeah. So drfred360.com is a great place to find me. drfred360.com. Everything I do and all my connections, and there's some freebies there. My books are there. My whole list of podcast guests. I've been on, I think, 275 podcasts as a guest, and I've dropped 300 of my own as a host. That's all on there. So if you're podcast happy, and maybe the people who are listening are, that's an option. And another place to find me is at undoctorreset.com. So if you look at Undoctor Reset, that program is fresh and solid. And I'm very, very, very proud of it. And it's finally aligned with who I know I came here to be. It's a culmination of the 45 years in the field and 67 years on the planet, and really taking a look at creating a space for allowing people to step into their greatness and step into their strength and step into their purpose. And that's what we do, and we do it progressively. It's a well-designed, time-tested, proven method, and off we go. And then Moss method is there. The True Voice technology is there. The Welcome to Humanity founding aspect of life is there. And then, of course, the actual resetting and rediscovering who you really were the whole time.
Beautiful. Beautiful, Dr. Fred. Well, thank you so much for sharing so openly, and also for, I'll say thank you or congratulations for having the courage to find your purpose and to find your way to contribute and bring your creativity to humanity with Welcome to Humanity. So thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing valuable tools with us, and look forward to continuing the conversation.
Likewise. Thanks for having me. Great conversation, Art. Well done.
Thank you.
I can't wait to hear what action you are taking.
Connect with me on LinkedIn or our website, lifeintransition.online, and let me know. Let a friend know too. It could be a huge encouragement to them and keep you on the track. Thank you so much for joining me today. Make sure you subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts, and it would mean a lot to me if you left a review and shared this episode with a friend. If you want to learn more about me and what I do when I'm not podcasting, please visit me at artblanchford.com. Thank you for listening. Together, let's make the most of life in transition.